When I was just a young child, around 4 or 5 years old, my parents' recent separation had brought some changes into my life. My mom moved into a 2-bedroom apartment, and whenever I stayed with her, I preferred to sleep in her bed. Our bedrooms were conveniently located across from each other at the end of a hallway on the first floor. It was a warm summer, and I remember my mom often left a window open in her room, just above the headboard of her bed. One fateful night, I woke up in the middle of the night and noticed our cat sitting in the doorframe of my mom's room. I should note that her door was open, giving me a partial view into my own bedroom. This was unusual since our cat typically slept with us in the bed. As I watched the cat, it suddenly walked into my bedroom and meowed, drawing my attention away from the peculiar situation. I turned to face my mom and tried to wake her up, letting her know something was amiss. In just a few seconds, we both looked back at the doorframe, and to our horror, we saw a man standing there, making his way out of my bedroom. My mom's maternal instincts kicked in, and in a quick and fearless move, she picked me up and literally threw me out of the screen window. She followed me outside, and together, we began screaming for help while someone called 911. The police arrived promptly, but to their puzzlement, they couldn't find any signs of forced entry. The front door was unlocked, leading them to believe that the intruder had managed to exit that way. Strangely, my mom insisted that she had locked the door that night using the deadbolt and chain lock. About a week later, my mom was cleaning the kitchen when she stumbled upon a chilling discovery in our water heater closet. She found a notebook filled with names and disturbing drawings, along with a pair of gloves and some gum wrappers. Naturally, the police were called again, but with no concrete evidence, they could only speculate that the intruder had been inside our home, hiding until we were asleep. As time passed, the fear of that night slowly subsided, and we tried to move on with our lives. However, it seemed like the strange occurrences were not over yet. One day while I was doing my laundry, one of the lights in the basement blew out. Our basement was set up in a way that the laundry room was separated from the rest of the space by a wall and a door. To get upstairs, I had to exit the laundry room and walk through the other part of the basement, where the only light on that side was broken, leaving it quite dark. Finishing my laundry, I dreaded the walk through the dark basement. As I exited the laundry room and got halfway through the basement, an eerie cackle echoed around me, sending shivers down my spine. It was a sound that seemed to mimic a witch's laugh, but with a sinister twist, as if it came from someone who had been smoking for 50 years, making their voice creaky and haunting. Without hesitating, I bolted for the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest. I waited until my father returned home before mustering the courage to change the bulb in the basement. Since then, I've never heard that chilling cackle again, but I've never shared this unnerving experience with anyone in the house. The memory of these eerie events still haunts me to this day, and it has forever changed how I perceive safety and the hidden dangers that could lurk in the shadows. The fear that gripped our lives during those unsettling times has made me vigilant and cautious, always listening to my instincts and trusting my gut feelings. Even though we moved on from that apartment, the chilling memories remain, serving as a reminder that danger can sometimes be closer than we think, and that we must always be prepared to protect ourselves and our loved ones. This chilling tale happened to my friend, whom we'll call Minji, about a year or so ago. Minji is in her early 20s and works as an English tutor in South Korea. One evening, a few years back, she was tutoring a high school boy. The study session ran late, and by the time they were done, the buses had already stopped running. Faced with the dilemma of how the boy would get home, he asked Minji if he could crash on her floor for the night and catch the first bus in the morning. While Minji was hesitant about the idea of having a teenage male student stay the night, the boy pleaded with her, eventually convincing her to allow him to stay. They made their way back to her one-room apartment, and Minji got into her bed while the boy laid a blanket out on the floor to sleep. As the night wore on, they both drifted off into slumber. But in the middle of the night, around 2 a.m., Minji was abruptly awakened by the boy. "I'm really hungry," he insisted. "Let's go get some food." Groggy and disoriented, Minji couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Food? Now? It's 2 a.m., go back to bed," she said. However, the boy was persistent. "No, I'm so hungry, let's eat something now." Minji suggested that there was ramen in the kitchen that he could prepare for himself, hoping he would be satisfied with that. But that wasn't what the boy wanted. "There's a 24-hour restaurant just down the road. Let's go there," he urged. Despite her reluctance, Minji eventually gave in to his continuous pleas, and they both left the apartment to find something to eat. Once they were out on the street, the boy suddenly changed his demeanor and confessed, "I'm not hungry. I woke up in the middle of the night and looked under your bed. There's a man sleeping there." Horrified and bewildered, Minji called the police immediately. When the authorities arrived, they made a shocking discovery. A homeless man had been secretly living in Minji's apartment for the past 2 months, hiding under her bed while she slept. A high school boy had noticed the intruder because he had slept on the floor and had a clear view under the bed. The homeless man had managed to evade detection for such a long time, taking advantage of Minji's routine and familiarity with her own living space. The incident left Minji traumatized and feeling violated, as she couldn't comprehend how someone had managed to live undetected in her home for so long. From that day on, she became much more cautious and vigilant, taking extra measures to secure her apartment and ensure her safety. This harrowing experience serves as a stark reminder that danger can lurk in unexpected places, even in the sanctity of our own homes. It has made Minji more cautious and wary of trusting strangers, and she is now hyper-aware of her surroundings, determined never to let such a nightmarish situation happen again. The tale of Minji's chilling encounter serves as a cautionary story for all, urging us to be vigilant and mindful of our surroundings, no matter how familiar they may seem. It reminds us that safety is never guaranteed and that we must take proactive steps to protect ourselves and those around us from potential threats that may be hidden in the darkness. In the vast and desolate high desert of Eastern California, I found myself embarking on a journey from 29 Palms to Albuquerque, New Mexico. It was a lonesome route, a shortcut that traversed a 2-lane road leading through a barren wasteland, with little to break the monotony except for the nearly abandoned town of Amboy, located almost as far below sea level as Death Valley itself. As I drove alone on that hot afternoon, my car ascended into the mountain range that lay between Amboy and Interstate 40. Navigating through a canyon flanked by tall grass on both sides, I began to notice something peculiar in the distance. There, in the middle of the road, lay a red Pontiac Venero, stopped sideways across both lanes. My instincts told me that something was amiss. As I drew closer, I noticed a suitcase open, its contents strewn haphazardly around, and my eyes fell upon 2 lifeless figures lying face down on the road ahead. A man and a woman, their bodies still and motionless. An eerie feeling washed over me, and the hair on the back of my neck stood on end. Being a Marine, I knew I had to be cautious, so I reached under the seat and retrieved my 9mm pistol, chambering a round. Everything about the scene seemed off, too perfect, as if it were staged to lure unsuspecting travelers into an ambush. I sensed danger lurking in the shadows, and my gut told me not to approach the bodies or the car. Instead, I scanned the surroundings, searching for a way to navigate past the grim tableau safely. As I examined the road ahead, a line materialized in my mind, a path I could take to pass by the man and woman on their left, then swerve to the right of the woman and the Pontiac Fiero, and finally find myself on the other side, out of harm's way. I shifted my car into first gear, adrenaline coursing through my veins, and with a burst of determination, I executed the precise maneuver I had planned. I whizzed past the Fiero without colliding with it or the lifeless bodies in the road. Relief washed over me momentarily as I drove ahead a few hundred feet, allowing myself to catch my breath and let my heart rate slow. In my rear view mirror, however, my fears were realized. The 2 bodies had risen to their knees, and to my shock, about 20 people emerged from the tall grass on either side of the road, surrounding the car and the lifeless couple. Without a moment's hesitation, I slammed my right foot on the gas pedal, and my car surged forward with incredible speed. I didn't release the pressure until I needed to slow down for the I-40 East on-ramp. My mind raced with what-ifs and uncertainties. I will never know what would have transpired had I stopped to check on the bodies or parked my car any closer to the mysterious group. The events of that day will forever remain etched in my memory, a stark reminder of the dangers that can lurk in the most unexpected places. From that moment on, I vowed to be even more vigilant, cautious, and attuned to my instinct, for it was only by sheer luck and quick thinking that I managed to evade a potentially harrowing fate. The isolated and enigmatic stretch of desert road that I once perceived as mundane had transformed into a haunting reminder that life can turn treacherous in the blink of an eye. On that eventful Friday night, my friend picked me up from my house in a hurry to head to a hockey game in the city. We were running late, but we were having such a great time during the car ride that I didn't even notice I had forgotten my phone. It wasn't until we were at the hockey game that I started to worry about my phone, fearing that I might have dropped it somewhere. In the midst of the game, I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. My mind kept wandering back to my missing phone, so I borrowed my friend's phone and rushed to the bathroom to dial my number. 3 rings later, someone answered, but they remained silent on the other end. Anxious, I shouted into the phone, checking if my phone was at home, but there was no response. I assumed it was my little brother playing a prank on me and hung up. When I returned home later that night, my parents weren't there. I called them to see where they were and learned that they had gone out to eat and see a concert at the park with my little brother. They had left shortly after I did for the hockey game and would be home in around half an hour. With this information in mind, I began searching for my missing phone. However, my stomach churned with fear as I realized something alarming. If nobody in my family was home, how could someone from my family have picked up my phone? The realization hit me like a wave of panic. Just then, I heard the back door of my house open and close, and without hesitation, I rushed out the front door and ran to my neighbor's house to call the police. As I explained the situation to the authority, they promptly arrived at my house to investigate. It turned out that the back door had been left open, and someone had taken advantage of the opportunity to enter our house. Thankfully, nothing had been stolen, but the chilling thought that a stranger had been in our home while we were away left us all deeply unsettled. The incident served as a sobering reminder of the importance of home security and the potential risks we face even in familiar surroundings. We couldn't shake off the chilling thought that we could have unknowingly slept in our home while a stranger lurked in the shadows. It was a stark lesson in being vigilant, locking doors, and remaining cautious, even in the comfort of our own homes. From that night on, we made sure to take extra precautions to keep our home safe and secure, as the memory of that unnerving experience continued to haunt us long after the incident had passed. A while back, a new family moved in next door to mine, and it didn't take long for us to realize that there was something seriously off about their son. He had a twisted fascination with slasher movies and had a disturbing interest in my experiences serving in Vietnam, constantly wanting to hear gruesome details that no sane person would seek out. On top of that, he displayed a disturbing tendency to torment stray animals, setting off alarm bells for all of us. The situation escalated when he started paying an unsettling amount of attention to my 7-year-old daughter. He would strike up conversations with her when she walked home from school, or talk to her over the fence while she played in the backyard. But what really pushed me over the edge was when he called our house, specifically looking to speak to her. I marched over to their house and unleashed my anger, warning him to stay away from my daughter and making it clear that any further contact with her would not be tolerated. As time went on, my daughter began to act strangely, claiming there was something living in her closet at night but disappearing during the day. We brushed it off as her imagination running wild, but deep down, I couldn't shake a sense of unease. Then one night, my wife and daughter were away, leaving me alone to enjoy some late-night movies. As I dozed off on the couch, my phone rang, waking me from my slumber. It was my neighbor with the creepy son, and he was in a state of panic, claiming their son had gone missing. I was baffled as to why they would call me, but they insisted they saw lights on in my house and assumed I was awake. Fear gripped me as I realized I had been unconscious the entire time, and no one had turned any lights on in my house. The thought that someone might be inside my home sent a chill down my spine. I rushed outside to grab my shotgun, only to find the sheriff pulling up to my neighbor's house just as I arrived. Panicked, I told the deputies that someone was in my house, and they quickly joined me in my frantic race back to my home. As we approached, I could see lights on in my daughter's room and a silhouette pacing back and forth. The deputies wasted no time and stormed into the room, only to find the neighbor boy waiting there. He had set up a sickening little hideout in my daughter's closet, admitting that he had been watching her sleep in the moonlight. The horror of the situation sent shivers down our spines, and I thanked my lucky stars that we had intervened before something much worse could happen. The boy was promptly taken into custody, and his parents were devastated and shocked by his actions. We soon learned that he had a history of disturbing behavior, but no one had ever suspected he would go to such lengths. The incident left our neighborhood shaken, and we became more vigilant about our safety and the safety of our loved ones. To this day, the memory of that night lingers, a stark reminder that danger can be closer than we think and that it is essential to be vigilant and protective of those we care about most. The ordeal brought our community together, and we made a pact to look out for one another, ensuring that nothing like that would ever happen again in our seemingly peaceful neighborhood. Late one night, my friends and I decided to engage in some nighttime fishing on the eerie banks of the James River. As we gathered around the shoreline, a cozy fire crackling and illuminating the dark, we chatted casually and enjoyed a few beers. Little did we know that the tranquil atmosphere would soon be shattered by an inexplicable and terrifying experience. Out of nowhere, a strange sensation washed over us like an invisible wave. The once lively chatter fell silent, as if someone had flipped a switch, leaving us all in an eerie hush. It was as though we were being watched by an unseen presence across the river, and the feeling was incredibly unsettling. In an attempt to shake off the unease, some members of our group tried to make light of the situation with typical macho humor. But any hint of levity was extinguished when an otherworldly sound pierced the stillness of the night. It was a blood-curdling, inhuman scream that sent shivers down our spines. The sound defied description, as if it came from a wild and primitive being with no language skills, a chilling wail that felt like being gutted alive. Every hair on my body stood on end, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was horribly wrong on the other side of the river. We remained frozen in our spots, unable to move or speak, as if paralyzed by fear. Then, with an even greater force, a second scream erupted from the other shore, amplifying the terror that had taken hold of us. Suddenly, our instincts kicked in, and several of us sprinted to our trucks, retrieving various firearms for protection. When we returned to the group, we huddled together, eyes fixed on the opposite shore, watching the light from the fire reflecting off the rocks as we waited anxiously for another scream or any sign of movement. Just as we braced ourselves for the worst, a third scream pierced the night air, this time coming from the bushes on our side of the river, mere yards away. Panic engulfed us as we fled the scene, leaving behind most of our belongings in the rush to escape the inexplicable terror. Once safely inside our trucks, we heard the wail one last time, this time coming from just beyond the tree line. We wasted no time in driving away, flooring it with adrenaline-fueled urgency, desperate to put as much distance as possible between us and whatever sinister force lurked in the darkness. To this day, we remain haunted by the chilling encounter, never having found out what or who was responsible for those horrifying screams. The mystery remains unsolved, leaving us with a lingering sense of unease and a newfound respect for the enigmatic and uncharted mysteries that can dwell in the darkest corners of the world. The memory of that night serves as a stark reminder that there are things beyond our understanding, things that defy explanation and leave us forever changed by the sheer terror they invoke.